views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hi, and welcome to Open BXRx, BronxNet special coverage providing you the latest information, resources, services, and community efforts taking place locally here in the Bronx and virtually throughout the pandemic. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, and today is Tuesday, November 24th. Coming up, we'll learn how Seis Vecinos, a local restaurant, helped provide hurricane relief to Central America all the way from the Bronx. Then we'll discuss Hostos Community College's programs, initiatives, support system for students, and challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic. After that, Community Action for Safe Apartments, CASA, joins us to provide some important tenant updates and resources. And virtually at Hostos presents their 9th Biennial Dominican Studies Association Conference. Stay tuned to learn more. So please, stick around. Open BXRX starts now. Welcome to Open BXRX on BronxNet. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, inviting you to get social with us at BronxNet TV on Instagram and Twitter, and BronxNet Community Television on Facebook. Much of Honduras and Central America has been completely devastated by Hurricane Eta, a Category 4 hurricane that recently hit the country. The Bronx is home to thousands of Central American immigrants and Seis Vecinos, a Central American restaurant here in our borough. They have stepped up to send immediate aid and relief directly to those in need, all the way from the Bronx to Honduras. And here to tell us more is Omar Canales of Seis Vecinos. Omar, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Sonyi, and thanks to the BronxNet team as well.
Absolutely. It's always great having you here on the show and, on BronxNet. You're no stranger to the BronxNet team. So first, Omar, for those who may not be familiar, can you give us a little background about Seis Vecinos, the restaurant here in the Bronx on Prospect Avenue?
Yeah, so I remember the last time we were ever in the BronxNet studios was to talk about, my favorite subject, which is food. And, I remember we were featured on Foodie Down Bronx a year ago before the pandemic, and we were sharing that day about our little restaurant that we have over on Prospect Avenue, 640 Prospect Avenue to be exact. So it's a family-style restaurant, family-owned, family-run. We serve Central American cuisine. We emphasize on Honduran cuisine, as it is, pertaining to our heritage and roots as to where my family comes from. And we just serve a lot of a lot of comfort food, familiar comfort food that most people can relate to, and drinks as well. And we just try to keep a very, comforting, area to provide there in our corner.
And I think you guys do an incredible job at providing that comfort food, delicious comfort food, might I add. But Omar, to switch a little bit of gears here, as some of us may know who are tuning in, Hurricane Eta was a Category 4 hurricane that killed at least 178 people and left about 115 missing, primarily in Central America. Can you share how Seis Vecinos took this devastating news as a Central American restaurant serving the community of the Bronx, and how the impact and, just about the impact of the hurricane in the country?
Yeah, so the very interesting and also humbling thing was to actually have my cousin, she's the actual owner of the restaurant and who I work with closely on a daily basis. She was the one who reached out to me, telling me about how we could donate. I have this opportunity with her brother, also my cousin, out in Honduras, who is willing to provide outreach and provide the actual labor of distribution. So we were very fortunate enough to already have that access of distribution directly to the people out in Honduras who were affected the actual victims. So we decided to move forward. She provided the funds, which comes obviously directly from the business itself, to say, hey, we're definitely suffering here in New York, but we're able to provide a little something which goes a much longer way down in Central America, to essentially help our brothers and sisters out over there. So funds were put together, connections were put together very quickly, which once again humbled me and continues to humble me because, over here in New York, yeah, we have a lot of hunger, but compared to Latin America as in general, it does not compare. So we were able to put that logistics and a lot of even food that went from here, from other food distribution companies that are connected to the restaurant as well. And we were able to put that funding directly ourselves, the Seis Vecinos family itself, which is why if you notice how we talk about in our social media in a humbling way, that we were able to provide this, funding, food and essentials and awareness directly from us, and therefore trying to promote others to do the same and connecting us as a whole. And so, we still continue to learn about the devastation and how it'll echo for time to come. I also learned not just, my cousins directly, because I have a lot of cousins. You know how Latin American families are. We have cousins all over.
Yeah.
I learned about even other cousins of mine in other professions in Honduras as well, who are also banding together and trying to help those who are less fortunate, losing their homes, losing family members, down to losing their pets and, hopes and dreams. So, at the end of the day, the same way we all came from somewhere, the whole idea is to help those, because you never know how things go around.
And as you said, Omar, the community was already ravaged by COVID-19, the pandemic that we are in now. So imagine now being ravaged by a hurricane is, devastating. And thank you to Seis Vecinos for taking, the initiative and helping the community despite how far we are, all the way from the Bronx. And we saw the post on social media. I think it's amazing and incredible the work that you guys did. And you're so humble about it. I know that I invited you to the interview today, but it's more to raise awareness about what's going on. As we know, Seis Vecinos donated 70,000 pounds of food directly to those affected by Hurricane Eta in Honduras. Omar, can we just talk about the importance of mutual aid and helping each other, especially during these tough times and during this pandemic?
So I love staying in touch with our other neighboring restaurants here in the Bronx who provide mutual aid. And those you will easily find humbly representing themselves also on social media as well. They're an inspiration for us. I love to share that type of, vibe with my family, who also helps run the restaurant. And what's also very interesting in how the world just does its rotation is how it took a pandemic to teach us all about mutual aid.
Yeah.
I feel, and how to do it in a modern age, full of social media. So what's interesting is at the beginning of March earlier this year, I was very fortunate enough through the neighboring partners of other restaurants here in the Bronx to get in touch with an organization run by Chef Jose Andres, who also does a lot of mutual aid himself as a very fortunate man and giving man himself, through his organization by the name of World Central Kitchen. They were able to, through us, provide a lot of aid, where we were able to provide meals directly to those in need here in the Bronx, to other nonprofits here in the Bronx, serving our undeserved community. And so when we needed it most, they were also there to help us. Right. So we've also kept in touch with other organizations through that aid as well, passing along that kind of, help and vibe. We ended up also giving meals to those that came to us, especially in the beginning of March, April, and May, when everyone was the most tense during the pandemic. And we provided meals directly from us to other organizations that were providing masks to children, for example. and other organizations that end up asking us, directly. So it's taught us the importance of it. It's also taught us, I think, most importantly, that if, and I hope it also teaches local politicians that, you know, there's a way to do it together. The same way, as I mentioned, World Central Kitchen, is able to provide us an example ultimately of if the funds are allocated directly to help not only small business, we're able to feed our own community right in our backyard. So if those connections are made correctly and are supervised correctly, we can ultimately build a self-sustaining system in the long run. And it's unfortunate that it took a pandemic to expose a lot of that, ultimately.
That is absolutely true. We are in the Bronx where a lot of people face food insecurity at high rates here. And the pandemic has definitely amplified the issue that already existed in our borough. So mutual aid, it's not new in America, right? But it has been more prevalent throughout the pandemic. So it's inspiring to see how much the community has banded together in a small scale to help each other. And it's definitely true what you say, Omar, about just the community, learning through the pandemic that this is the most important time for all of us to just learn about how to help and care for each other as well. And food, at the end of the day, is what you provide as Seis Vecinos. Food is so important, and sustainability through that food, So I also wanted to share that, Seis Vecinos is also a local small business in the Bronx. And as you said in the beginning, has been struggling throughout the pandemic, but you guys have put people in the forefront. How are you balancing also, running a business and helping others who need your help at this time?
Yeah, so that's an everyday, more like juggle and a struggle at the same time. But just keeping in touch, with other small businesses and other merchants and other small business owners is always a plus, because we're also just able to kind of share that same stress. And, it's basically involving us having to do our homework, keeping up with the city every single day, as we're all watching, Cuomo and de Blasio on TV. Us in the hospitality restaurant business, we're constantly thrown new rules and regulations every single day. Because nobody wants fines. Fortunately, we've only been warned. But it's an everyday struggle of just trying to make sure that not just our customers are safe, but our staff is safe, because at the end of the day, it all has to make sense and remain sustainable in the long run, because nobody wants to shut down amidst, the everyday anxiety of, the infection rates that we're facing right now. So it's us just being glued to our social media, the news, making sure that we're doing the right thing for everyone, having everyone, understand in every language that they speak, that this is a serious thing, and that we're all just trying to collect our pennies right now to make sure we have the right supplies and right rules and regulations in place. So that's really what it takes.
Thank you for sharing, Omar. Before we go, can you just share any resources, links, locations, any social media pages for other Bronxites who would like to help provide relief to Central America at this time?
So I've tried my best in promoting directly to the Seis Vecinos Instagram page especially. You can also see some of our stuff on Facebook as well. That I've also linked, for example, the Central American Collective. We've met before, even at the restaurants. Before the pandemic, they provide helpful resources. Another hot topic, which is very interesting and not just affecting Central America, but the world, is global climate justice, which is, informing ourselves about what we can do as individuals so that the coming generations, and even our own generation that is already becoming affected, as we're able to see the effects of global warming. This is a new topic that you can see over on the Central American Collective Instagram page and their social media. You'll see that they've also linked the Honduran consulate, who has been very generous, who we've also donated to their causes even before the pandemic. And another one is called Beyond the Bubble, guide, also linked on our social media, who provide links directly to individual people who have put in their own like grassroots organizations to be able to give um, whatever resources they can give. Another highlight, probably one of the warmest ones and one of my highlights probably of this week, has been that the Port Morris distillery reached out to me through the Seis Vecinos Instagram page, saying that they have a warehouse full of essentials and materials and clothing that they can potentially donate. So I was able to put them in touch with a couple of sisters who I've also linked their phone number through WhatsApp on our Instagram post. And they've gotten in touch with the Port Morris distillery so they were able to collect their materials and donate to the Central American region as well. So that's just, for me, like once again, another humbling like event to happen. And just, it reminds me, you know, that there's just so much work to be done, and there isn't enough that we can give, unfortunately, but that we try, you know, as much as we can. And, you know, that's why I stay in touch with, you know, Port Morris Distillery and other groups like that here in the Bronx. And, you know, it just makes me more proud to like be from here.
Absolutely. Gracias, Omar, for, you know, spending the time with us today and highlighting what's going on in Central America and all the work that's being done all the way from the Bronx. On behalf of Seis Vecinos and Port Morris Distillery, I'm so happy to hear that, you know, this networking is happening right here in our borough. Thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
Again, folks, Central America still needs plenty of help. And if you have the capacity to help, Seis Vecinos continues to use their platform to provide resources and information. You can follow them at Seis Vecinos on social media. And also, please stop by to support one of our favorite local Central American and Mexican businesses located on 640 Prospect Avenue. We'll be right back on Open BXRx.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting from BronxNet, this is Trans.
Welcome back. Since 1968, Hostos Community College has served as an educational agent for change, transformation, and improving the quality of life in the South Bronx and neighboring communities. And that has not stopped throughout the pandemic. Joining us now to share how things have been at Hostos these past few months is President Daisy Cocco de Filippis. She's the interim president at Hostos CUNY. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lopez.
Of course.
Very nice to be with all of you.
Nice being with you.
I am a new interim president, but I am not new to Hostos. I'm not new to CUNY. I'm an immigrant educated by CUNY completely, all my degrees, from my bachelor's to my PhD, are CUNY degrees. And I was at Hostos from January 2002 till July 2008, when I assumed the presidency of Nagato Valley Community College in Connecticut, where I served for 12 years. I came back because I love Hostos, because I am so proud that CUNY has a Latino chancellor. I want to be part of that. As it turns out, there's also a pandemic, so I also want to be part of the effort to continue to move through education, the community I love.
Thank you so much for sharing. Your familiar face in the Hostos community, and the students, the staff, everyone appreciates the work that you've done over the years in the community. Can you just tell us about how campus life has changed at Hostos during the pandemic for both staff and students? How has the college prepared for this fall semester?
Well, I have to tell you, there was a lot of good work that was done by my predecessor, President Gomez, who retired. Um, um, and in terms of getting the faculty and staff ready for an online environment, I think we have a senior vice president for administration who has been with the college for over 20 years, known as one of the most effective. So there's a lot of work about keeping the college safe, clean, and a lot of generosity. So right now we are about 96% of our classes this fall, and for the spring as well. About that online. There are different versions of that. Some of that is what they call online synchronous, which is you meet online, but you have a set schedule, and then you have asynchronous. Okay, so the college offers over 1,000 classes, day, night, synchronous, but also asynchronous to deal with give flexibility to those working parents and so on. We do have on the ground that 4% of our classes where a lot of social distancing and every precaution is taken, and that is to support allied health sciences courses and the science labs. So what has happened? So I come and I said, okay, there's some things I need to do because my usual way is to walk around and hug people and talk to people. That can't happen, right? We created a number of things. First of all, the college is going through the process of writing the self-study for the accreditation for the 10th year. And so there's a lot of people involved in that. And keeping that structure moving forward was really important. And communication was key to that. So 3 weeks into my tenure, I created an Hostos weekly online, Semanario Hostosiano. I write a letter, I put a poem, we celebrate everybody in that poem, and then I have different departments, and even our student government president, Mr. Apache, he writes his own column in there every week just to keep everybody connected, and communication, is really important. The food pantry extended its hours Monday to Friday, and then also by appointment, and also gift cards. There were the administration organized to distribute many of the devices that the students need. So that happened. Then I created this Hostos Culture Talks, Veladas Hostosianas. We're working into the fourth one. We just had the borough president on Friday to celebrate Puerto Rican Heritage Month. So that is happening as well. And then to stay close to community, we created the Hostos Community College Community Advisory Council, and we send a lot of letters. I do write a lot of letters and reach out to people. So I was hoping for about 30 folks to agree to join that advisory council, and it's in education, in the arts, small businesses, healthcare, all of that. Okay, so the first meeting took place about the last week of October, so 2-3 weeks ago, and 61 people came. Since then, because I continue to meet people, like now at 3 o'clock, I'm meeting another group, multiple Zoom. The thing about Zoom is that in a sense, it's not as warm and personal, but it connects you to people everywhere.
Yes, the work has obviously not stopped, as we said in the beginning. And I actually wanted to elaborate, President Cocco de Filippis. You mentioned the food insecurity in the community, and how the food pantry was established and is still going on Monday through Friday by appointment. Can we also talk about the lack of tech equity in the Bronx? And many students in the community are faced with lack of access to digital devices.
That's an ongoing conversation right now, but before I even got here, I was invited by Congressman Adriano Espaillat to be part of a community group that was going to be looking at mental health issues, and doctors and in the community. And so they put me in the committee on education and technology. And my big concern has always been, now is technology added to it? But forever since I was a young faculty and, you know, with a lot of fire going out there, I would talk to the parents and say, take a look at what happens in 4th grade. If they don't click in math in the 4th grade, if they don't get, they're not up to speed with their reading comprehension and writing, but the math, because so much of the future in technical careers and sciences, right? And look at that. And my other pet peeve was, if they're in 8th and 9th grade, are they taking algebra? All right, so you add to that, and in fact, when I was here at the provost, we got a small NSF grant, and some of my wonderful faculty in math were working with parents, just to work with parents to help them understand the homework so that they can help their kids with their math homework. Because some of the members of our communities, they're working and they are not, you know, they're intimidated a little bit with some of the schoolwork and so on. So imagine now, can you imagine now this digital divide? If you have a device, and even if you have some of the Wi-Fi, right? What happens in a house with 3 kids? Mm-hmm. And if the parents are working home, they're using the device. How many devices can they use? How many can they afford? They can't. How do they get the work done? And so part of it is what is happening is that there's a group of some very talented young people. I won't mention names here because I don't want to drop names. I figure let them talk about it themselves. But a lot of very talented young people running some of these not-for-profits here in the Bronx, you know, participated in that committee as well. And now then they went to talk to the borough president. So now they're talking about a kind of a bigger thing where we all try to advocate to create Wi-Fi communities in a sense. And so that's all in development and it's very preliminary, and it's not Daisy's creation, it's the creation of a committee that was put together by Congressman Espaillat. But I think there's interest, and I think there's some of these younger folks who run the not-for-profits. The college certainly is looking to find a way to participate in that process as well.
Absolutely, the tech equity and the digital divide in our communities is definitely one of those you know, the social, the impact that we have all faced in the borough. And we were there, BronxNet was there at the Tech Equity Day of Action with the borough president and a couple of those leaders that you didn't want to name drop. So we're definitely have our fingers on the pulse there. I wanted to talk about something else. I wanted to talk about the arts and culture at Hostos. The Cultural Center is one of the most lively, exciting cultural centers in the entire borough. Can you tell us about leveraging the virtual space for events?
Oh my goodness, and how? Since September 25th till now, 29 virtual events.
Wow.
Thriving, all right? And I think the season closes December 11th. Coming up in November, I'm going to give you the right date. They are going to have a Kwanzaa celebration that's going to be taped, but they will use for the first time the main stage to tape it from. So there are ways. The thing is that they tell me there was an exhibit that they encourage all these painters on the other side of the Hudson or whatever, because it is virtual. People, you keep streaming it and they keep seeing it, and so you have more than one way to reach your audience. It's more. There are more opportunities. Like I said to you, there are deficits because I remember being here, and I remember being at the what is it, the Hostos, the main stage there, right?
Yes.
And getting up and dancing in the aisle in my younger day when there was some very nice Cuban music being played. Are you kidding? So you can't replace that. But what you can do, and what the college has done really well, and it will continue to work on, is the advantages of virtual communication in reaching audiences outside of the United States. They tell me as well And so that's, you know, I'm from the half full, glass half full kind of school. So I looked at that and I said, somehow we're having an impact.
Yeah.
And somehow the arts and music that are so much a part of keeping a community alive.
And for those who are tuning into the interview, you can find out about some of those events on Hostos' website, hostos.cuny.edu. There are a lot of things happening. As the interim president stated, we have Shifting Streams, the virtual exhibit. They came on the show as well to talk about it. And it's all amazing events. Before we go, can we also talk about, you mentioned it earlier, you are the founder of the Dominican Studies Association. And later on in the show, we're going to talk about Professor Nelson Santana and Evelyn Fernandez-Ketcham about the event. But can you please just share a little bit about the upcoming event really quickly to invite our viewers? We're running.
Well, let me just say to you that it is about how to, you know, part of it is dealing with the pandemic. Part of it is at an international level. Part of it is the importance of culture, of ethnicity, and in this case of this urgency. Dominican studies for people to know. Folks, I mean, you never, ethnic and equity and social sensitivity have never been more underscored than now. Let me just say that.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this information and giving us an update on Hostos Community College, Interim President Daisy Cocco de Feliz.
Could I just add one last thing here, may I?
Oh, yes.
Abuelitas and parents, get your kids to register for school for the spring if they're not registered.
Yes. You heard it here.
It is on our website. There's a lot of information, wonderful opportunities, and they need to be in school. They really do. So thank you. Thank you.
I'll give them that website right here, right now. You can visit hostos.cuny.edu for more information. Also follow them on social media at Hostos College for updates. And if you're a student at Hostos, the Hostos Food Pantry takes place by appointment only, Monday through Friday. And to schedule that appointment, you can contact Madeline Cruz at 718-518-4141 or email mcruz@hostos.cuny.edu. We'll be right back.
Who's most at risk for coronavirus? People over 65, people with underlying medical conditions like heart disease, chronic lung disease, asthma, diabetes, people undergoing cancer treatment, and people with weakened immune systems. What should you do if you or a loved one is at higher risk? Avoid close contact with people. Avoid crowds. Stay home if you can. Wash your hands frequently. Learn more ways to protect yourself and others at coronavirus.gov.
Welcome back. 9 months into the COVID-19 pandemic, tenants are still fighting and advocating to protect families from eviction and demanding rent cancellations. Joining us now to discuss is Fitzroy Christian, Community Action for Safe Apartments, aka CASA leader. Thank you so much for joining us again. Fitzroy, you're not a new member to the show. You've been here before and you've helped us so much during the pandemic with the information that our tenants in the Bronx need. So thank you.
And thank you for having me again.
Absolutely.
It's my pleasure to be here with you.
So to start, Fitzroy, just last month, housing courts began processing cases. And according to the Housing Data Collective, nearly 50% of those cases came from here in the Bronx. Can you share more about this and how CASA is fighting against this trend?
Well, we know already that the Bronx is the most affected of virtually everything that happens bad in New York City, right? Historically, there have been more cases in housing courts in the Bronx than in any other borough, even though we are not the largest borough by a very large margin. So it should not be surprising that most of the cases that are back in court now, especially since the Bronx is the new frontier, the new area to be gentrified, that we should not be surprised that this is what is happening. But the news gets worse as we go along, because now we are, as you said, 9 months into the pandemic. There's a second or third surge, depending on whom you want to speak to, the governor or the mayor. And things are getting worse than they were a month or so ago. And again, the Bronx is being hit hardest. And with all of the cases that have been brought to court, now that all of the restrictions and all of the administrative orders that came down from the court, the Office of the Court Administration, are lifted, the Bronx is the one where we see the most cases already and have been brought to court.
And Fitzroy, when we talk about those cases coming to the court, we're also talking about a potential packed courtroom, no? A housing court that will be packed here in the Bronx. Is a concern also that the COVID-19 cases will rise the more people go to these courts?
Yes, and this is why we are campaigning to keep the courts closed. Because technologically, the Bronx is also the least equipped. And we also have an aging population, and most of those people do not have the technology to do remote hearings. So they're going to be forced to go to court. We are not satisfied that the courtrooms have been properly deep cleaned, nor are we comfortable with the fact that they're going to be letting only a few people in at a time. And then our seniors, people who need help, are going to be left outside now that it is cold, until those people who are inside, the 10 or 12 who they may have inside, come out, and then they will be let in. So nothing of any of the logistics about how they're going to conduct in-person court hearings, those people who do not have the ability to have the hearings remotely. Nothing has satisfied us. So yes, we are deeply concerned about the unnecessary exposure of vulnerable people to COVID, and even exposing them to extreme cold weather, waiting outside the courtrooms as people come in and out and they rotate them.
That is definitely a huge concern for tenants and for Bronxites in general. Another concern that I wanted to bring up was evictions. Can a tenant be evicted if they have not paid their rent throughout the pandemic? Can you just help us navigate that, Fitzroy?
I'm going to start with an answer everybody uses and laughs, but it is very serious. Yes and no. This is the way it works. And I'm including all of the so-called relief efforts that both the city, state, and federal governments have claimed that they're providing. If you can show that you were financially affected by COVID, you cannot be evicted on that basis, even if you owe rent. What would happen is, between the courts and your own offer, you could negotiate a pay schedule with your landlord. But the court will not evict you because you owe rent now. The problem is that a lot of us don't have the wherewithal to be paying tens of thousands of dollars that we have accumulated in rent arrears and still stay current when this pandemic is over, or even during the pandemic when we go to court and we have our hearings. What can happen is that as you accumulate debts and you're unable to pay, they can bring you to court again, and the chances are you can't be evicted at that time, which means it's not because you owe, but now, because you're not being evicted for what you owe now, but you're going to be evicted because you do not have the financial means to clear up your debt now.
Got it.
Also, they would have the opportunity for the first time to take you to small claims court or to the civil court, where they can get, because they can now get a monetary damages for what you owe. They get a decision to collect their money. So when you begin to work, they can then garnish your salaries. If you have a vehicle, probably for work or whatever reason, they could take it. Any of your assets can be attached as the landlords make an effort to get what you owe them. So then you're not going to be able to pay your rent when their salaries are garnished. And so they could bring you a court again, and you're still exposed to being evicted, because that did not happen because you lost your job, because you're working now. You're back at work. So you can be evicted at that. So it is still COVID related, but they do not see it that way.
Got it. Thank you, Fitzroy. And let's say a tenant has a concern as of right now. What are some tenant rights? What do tenants have the right to at this moment?
Well, the best right, as you may put it, but it is still not something that we're happy with, is that anyone who's brought to court now, regardless of their economic status, the zip codes, they are entitled to free legal assistance under the right to counsel. So tenants should know that, yes, the moment you get your notice that you have been taken to court for arrears, you'll be notified by the court, and the landlords should notify you that you are entitled to free legal assistance and where in your area you should go to avail yourself of that free legal assistance. Housing Code Answers is one of the primary citywide agencies and organizations that would have that information. Their number is 212-962-4795. Again, 212-962-4795, Housing Code Answers. They're citywide. They have a presence in each of the housing courts throughout the city, and they're open Monday through Fridays from 9 to 5. They will be able to tell you, depending on your borough and where you locate, which zip codes you're in, which of the community legal services may be available to you, and how you could go to make sure that you get legal representation when you go to court.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that important resource with our viewers. And let's say a specific questions. If a tenant received a letter from their landlord or a court petition, should they get in touch with housing courts answers? Is that the number to call as well?
No, that is for questions that you may have other than your court appearance. The process will be this. The landlord decides he's going to take you to court now, let's say today. When he goes to court, he files his papers. The courts will send a notice to you, a petition that you will see from the court stating that you have been taken to court, but where there is a date and time on the courtroom number, you will see a note to be determined. What will happen is that you will be notified later on by the court, because they're trying to process all of the backlogs they have right now before they do any current hearings. You'll be notified of a date, probably be no earlier than the end of January going into February 2021. So they will tell you which courtroom number you will go to, the time and date of your hearing. And you will also be notified on those documents that you're entitled to free legal assistance, and they will tell you where to go as well. You cannot call the court to get specific information about your case. This is where Housing Code Answers come in. And in the Bronx, we have Bronx Legal Services, who is one of the primary community legal services that housing courts will be sending your cases to. Their number is 917-661-4500. At that number, you could have specific answers. And how the attorneys there will let you know whether or not your case is ready, and they will give you advice as to what to do. They will make schedules for you to do an online intake. You'll be assigned an attorney, and then they will plan with you to go to court.
Got it.
The possibilities are that your first hearing is going to be postponed because the attorney is going to need to speak with you to find out what is going on, what problems or issues you may have as your defenses. So your case probably is not going to be heard the first time you go to court.
Okay.
So we are looking at another 6 months. If you get, if the process starts today, probably another 5-6 months before you actually will be going to court.
Fitzroy, thank you again so much for joining us once more to give this much needed information and these updates regarding tenant and housing rights, resident rights here in the Bronx. I'm going to share those numbers right now with our viewers, and I invite them to also follow CASA Bronx on social media if they have any questions regarding resources, updates regarding tenant rights. So thank you again for your time. We've run out of time. Thank you.
Okay, and again, it's my pleasure to be getting this information with your assistance to our folks in the Bronx. And you have a very wonderful day and be safe.
You as well. Again, folks, you can follow at CASA Bronx on social media for updates, resources, and information regarding your rights as a tenant in the Bronx. If you are a tenant in need of legal services, you may call the Bronx Legal Services Hotline at 917-661-4500. That hotline is 24/7. And if you have any questions regarding housing courts, you may call the Housing Courts Answers 9 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. That hotline number is 212-962-4795. We will be right back.
With coronavirus spreading, people at higher risk must take extra precautions. You're at higher risk if you're over 65 or if you have an underlying medical condition. Please visit coronavirus.gov for more information.
Welcome back. The 9th Biennial Dominican Studies Association Conference seeks to stimulate dialogue among scholars, artists, and cultural activists working on Dominican subjects across the world, while exploring complex issues of social relations. The event usually takes place in person at Hostos Community College, but this year's biennial conference will be taking place virtually due to the pandemic. Joining us now to discuss are Nelson Santana, Assistant Professor at Bronx Community College, and Evelyn Fernandez-Ketcham, Executive Director of Workforce Development at Hostos Community College. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sonyi, for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So first, before we start, for those who are not familiar, can you give us a little background about Dominican Studies Association and its history within CUNY?
So I'll start and I'll let Nelson to expand. But we are a professional organization, and basically it provides an opportunity in the forum for Dominican studies scholars to come together and be able to network, cultivate alternative agendas beyond their respective institutions, and to address the academic issues impacting the homeland, the local, and other global Dominican communities. The conference also is a great space for new and upcoming scholars. I know I myself benefited a great deal from the last conference that happened, and it was exciting to be at a place where I was surrounded by Dominicans and Latino scholars, and here I am. Now I'm on the board because I became very excited about having the space to be able to network. So it does live up to its membership expectations of creating the platform for up and coming and scholars to connect with other researchers and also to present their scholarly work. That is very important, and to obtain mentoring as well. Now I'm joined with other scholars in the Dominican community.
Thank you, Evelyn. And Nelson, did you also want to contribute to that?
Sure. I mean, yes, it's a place, where many different types of people, scholars, intellectuals, cultural activists, regular activists, elected officials, artists, they all come together and they form part of this amazing community. And yeah, it's a space for anyone and everyone interested in learning more about Dominican culture, Dominican society, etc.
Right. And, obviously this year is completely different. Community is still important despite the pandemic, but how has DSA helped support Dominican students in CUNY during the pandemic throughout these tough times?
I think that one of the things that has happened during the global pandemic is that issues in our community are just being highlighted and they're more amplified now. Again, I think that the conference is what we work toward to provide the space and the forum where students can connect, and continuing professional scholars to be able to connect with people who've been in the field. And one of the things that we try to embed in our theme this year was to put it out there that many of the issues that we're dealing with during the global pandemic have been amplified, so that we don't forget and move away from the work that many scholars have already been working on, and much of the research that has been already going on. The pandemic just amplifies it for us, and it gives us more energy to continue to research more and find out and figure out more ways that we can better assist our communities.
Thank you. Let's introduce our viewers a little more about the conference. This year is the 9th biennial, so it happens every other year. Can you tell us a little bit more about it and how this year is going to be different?
We have been forced, we have actually, we've taken a negative and turned it into a positive, in the sense that we're going to make this conference more accessible to the masses, for instance, right? So we will have a full online presence for the first time. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, for the first time ever, possibly, but definitely in comparison to the previous few conferences, this conference will be free to the public. Now, we are requesting a donation. However, the conference, again, two positives, is more accessible this year. And the other part is the free component.
Thank you, Nelson. And let's discuss the specific theme, crisis of truth, state of emergency, and social responses, the urgency of Dominican and ethnic studies in the present hour. Why was this theme so important for this year in particular?
Ethnic studies. Well, I don't want to get political here at all. But anyone who has been following politics in the past few years is aware, or if they're not aware, we're going to make them aware that certain policies have changed. So there has been, in certain parts of the United States, this shift of bringing down ethnic studies, underfunding ethnic studies programs, etc. And so ethnic study programs are, the humanities, for example, even in just regular colleges, the humanities are also being underfunded, as opposed to fields in STEM for the STEM fields, for example, right? The sciences, engineering, mathematics, etc. And so there has been this wave of scholars, for instance, that have been combating this, such as Dr. Loria Garcia Peña, for example, very famous case. And she has been one of the advocates and one of the champions of this. And so we actually want to highlight this aspect. We want to bring attention to this matter. We want to build a coalition of allies. And in fact, at this year's conference, there will be several panels that will address this matter. But we have Dr. Loria Garcia Peña, for example, who will be in one session. And we have another session specifically on ethnic studies as well. And so we encourage the program. If the program is actually out, we have finished it. It's just a matter of making it public. And once we make that available to the public and people, we'll share it later on the websites where they can access this information. And there you will see this lineup of ethnic studies, and hopefully people can join in the conversation and share this information. And going back to the topic of elected officials being a part of this conference, part of it is this affects us, right? There are policies that affect us in many, many, many ways. And I know there are scholars who do not like working with elected officials, but we believe that the Dominican Studies Association provides this platform for people from different fields and different walks of life to come together and address certain topics. Evelyn, would you like to take it from?
Sure. And I mean, it's exciting. The conference, the goal is to seek to stimulate discussion among scholars from everywhere in the world. In every conference, we draw scholars from Canada, Santo Domingo, Europe, other parts of the country. And what I think for me is very exciting and really important is that, we have to keep in mind that in New York City, amongst Hispanics, Dominicans continue to show the largest increase in total population. In 2016, the Pew Research Center reported that our population had grown over 2 million, in New York State holding the largest share of the population. But more importantly is that 42% of which over like 1 million are populated in New York City, New Jersey, Pennsylvania metropolitan area. The other important fact on the numbers is that 64% of Dominican immigrants living in the United States have been living here for more than 10 years. So this is why continuing this work is really important. And this is also important for CUNY, for the City University of New York, because in CUNY also Dominican students continue to be the largest share of the students in the CUNY system. So this is all very exciting that it's, you know, that we're continuing to do this and that we're opening it up now virtually and for free.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Nelson and Evelyn. Before we go, the DSA did call for proposals and submissions back in August. What types of themes are being explored in these papers that were submitted by some of the scholars, and how are they being presented to the public during the event and during the panels?
Well, there were actually so many different themes. We received a record number of proposals. It was amazing. And so we have several themes. We actually had to adjust our theme slightly, well, because you cannot really ignore COVID-19 and the pandemic. And so we had to adjust it. And we received several papers, and there are at least 2 panels, full panels on COVID-19, for example. We have topics, again, on ethnic studies, the importance of ethnic studies. We have topics on bachata, El Tieto Show, just production, artists, you know, all types of topics, and that will be explored. Different types of generations, you know, from the parents, the children, etc. And so, you know, we basically have something for everyone. When people look at the program and actually scroll down, they will see some pretty heavyweight scholars that, you know, they've known for years, or up and coming and emerging scholars and, you know, activists, etc. Evelyn, would you like to add a little bit more?
Yeah, well, I'm new to the space, so I defer to Nelson. For me, it's been very exciting to see the myriad of topics, because it's not just scholarly works as we know it to be. There's also cultural topics involved as well that include the music, which is all part of, you know, who we are. So I think that that's really exciting. We're also going to be holding an auction where some art pieces, cultural pieces, are going to be auctioned. So we look forward to that as well.
Sounds like a wonderful event. Thank you both so much for, you know, continuing this work and doing it despite the pandemic and transitioning to a virtual realm. Let me just invite our viewers to come and join the DSA biennial 9th biennial conference taking place December 4th to December 5th. So if you want to register, you can visit DominicanStudiesAssociation.org. You can find more information there. The flyer will be there. Also follow Hostos College on Twitter and Instagram in order to find out more information through Hostos. That's all for our show today. Thank you for tuning in to BXRx. I'm your host, Sonyi Lopez, wishing you and your family safety and wellness now and always.